Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to demonstrate to you the best way to build a wall. First and foremost is the safety of the builder. First, you're going to need some leather gloves or splinter resistant gloves, some eye protection. ANSI Z87 Plus is currently the best rated eye protection on the market. You're also going to need some ear protection. 80 decibels and above requires earmuffs or earplugs. 100 decibels and above requires earmuffs and earplugs. And before you use any tool, you should always inspect it. So the components of any wall are always going to be at least similar. So for this wall, we're going to have a top plate and a bottom plate, and in this case we're going to have 4 studs, and also of course the sheeting on the wall. The tools you're going to use for this are a skill saw or any reliable straight cutting hand saw, such as a handsaw or a miter saw, a Swanson speed square or any other brand of speed square, or straight edge if you prefer, a framing hammer, which usually means a longer handle, a waffle head, and slightly heavier than a normal hammer, a measuring tape of at least 10 feet. I like 25 or 35 foot measuring tapes personally. You're going to need a chalk line, which automatically comes inside of a chalk box that will be used for making straight lines, an extension cord for your powered saw if you choose to use a powered saw. You're also going to need materials for this. For this wall, I'm going to use OSB. This is one 4x8 sheet of oriented strand board. I have 5 8-foot 2x4s. I determined how many studs I needed by knowing that I was already going to make 16-inch on center studs for a 4x8 wall. These are 2.5-inch 10-penny nails that I'm going to use to secure the sheeting. And these are 3-inch 16-penny nails that I'm going to use for the framing. First thing you're going to need to do is make your top and bottom plate, which are the 2x4s that run along the top and bottom of the wall. For my 4x8 sheet, the top and bottom are both going to be 4-foot sections. So I'm going to start by measuring out 4 feet on the 2x4 and marking it with my pencil. Then I'm going to take my Swanson speed square, which as you can see has this ledge on one side, and put that ledge right against the side of the 2x4 and line the straight edge up against the mark that I made. Then scribe a straight line with my pencil. This is for cutting straight along. If you feel you can cut a straight line without using a speed square, then you don't need it. Or if you have a miter saw that cuts straight lines by setting it, then you don't need the speed square or the scribed line. For the skill saw, I'm going to set the depth of the blade by using the bed adjustment. I'm going to set it right there up here in the corner. You can see it's set on 2x, and then I'm going to tighten the bed adjustment down. Make sure that when you're cutting, you run the outside of the blade along the line of the piece of wood that you need. The blade has a thickness 2, so you need to make sure that you're not subtracting the thickness of the blade from your material. So make sure that you're running the outside of the blade along the line on opposite the side of the piece that you need. Next, I'm going to start the layout. You can see I have a measuring tape with a 16-inch and another one with a 32-inch. So here you can see they're red. The red always depicts the 16-inch on center. Make marks 3/4 inch off of that mark because the 2x4 is 1.5 inches thick. So 3/4 inch on each side. 3/4 inch of each side will make 1.5 inches thick mark. Then you can take that mark, line up your top and bottom plates, and scribe both of them at the same time if you keep the top and bottom of the top and bottom plates perfectly aligned. There are 2 conventions for this. You can either make a mark on both sides, or you can just make a mark on one side and put an X where the 2x4 of the stud is going to go. Next, you're going to need to cut some studs. My 8-foot wall will not require 8-foot studs because the stud is the wall height subtracted by the thickness of the top and bottom plate. So that's 8 feet minus 1.5 inches times 2, which is 3 inches. Here you see I've marked 92 7/8 inches. I subtract 1/8 of an inch for varying material thicknesses and to prevent any high tolerance situations with the sheeting. So it's kind of standard to subtract 1/8 of an inch so that things just kind of fit a little better. Once you've got the studs all cut, you line them up on their marks of the layout between the top and bottom plates. Then you can start nailing them together. The easiest way to start nailing them together is to first pound the first nails in while the top and bottom plate are horizontal or vertical, and then turn them horizontal so that they line up and are more easily secured to the studs. In the top left, you can see what I mean by having one side marked and then an X. The X lines up with the stud, and the one side is what the side of the stud lines up with. And in the bottom right, you can see that's what the bottom plate looks like when it's secured against all of the vertical wall studs. Then to make sure that the wall is square, you measure diagonally from left to right and then from right to left. Those two measurements should be the same. If they're not the same, you can shift walls in a shearing manner to make sure that the edges line up, and then remeasure to make sure that the measurements are the same. Then for the sheeting, you can snap lines with your chalk box by hooking the hook of the chalk line 16-inch on center measurements on your OSB or any kind of whatever sheeting you choose, and then dragging it out along that and making straight lines that correspond exactly to the center of the studs. Here you can see on the left that the chalk lines that I've snapped correspond perfectly to the center of the studs, and I can go ahead and line that straight up with the square frame and nail down the center of those studs or the center of those chalk lines, and I know that on the other side I'll be hitting the studs. And on the right you can see the finished 4x8 wall section. And that's a wall. Thank you for listening. Make sure that if you ever use a power tool, every time you walk away, you unplug it. You never know who's going to walk up on that and accidentally stick their hand in or pull the trigger just for fun.